G'day there, Signets and Swanlings. 2012 Premiership player Nick Smith here. It's my pleasure, as always, to introduce a bevy of bloods, a fan podcast of the Sydney Swans Football Club, brought to you by Noddy and Stevo, a pair of red and white tragics. So pop on the kettle and settle in as the boys had an in-depth chat about the Swans' last game, the Swans' next game, and a little bit about footy too. This is Nick Smith signing off until next week's episode. But in the meantime, remember, be good to your bloods and they'll be good to you.
Welcome back to a bevy of bloods. I'm Noddy, back from a quick break over to Fiji, tropical paradise. And I'm joined once again by Chris. G'day, Chris. Thanks for taking over the potty for the past few weeks with Jules and Brett. Did a smashing job, mate.
Yeah, thank you. It actually wasn't that hard, so I don't know what you've been complaining about.
You cheeky monkey. I might just have to go back to Fiji, mate.
Yeah, I could complain.
In this episode number 38, we're going to be reviewing the Swannies round 9 game. So fluff up your tail feathers and settle in for a potentially biased yarn about all things to do with our beloved bloods. Last Saturday night, our Sydney Swans won against the Essendon Bombers by 58 points with a final score of 14-21-105 to 6-11-47. Okay, mate, first impressions. What do you think of that?
Yeah, look, not a fantastic effort by the Bombers. In fact, it's gotten the AFL media so riled up that I don't think they know what to do with Essendon anymore. So that's how bad the game was for them. I felt that it was more their failure of a team to put it together than it was us. But it was a good statement game from us, I think, in some ways. We definitely bounced back from Gold Coast. We weren't as flat. We came out firing. It was a bit more physical on our side, and the team stats, as we'll go through, were all really high. So all in all, great to have it, great to see it. I'm very happy for us, the Swans fans, to have what we had there. But what that actually means, we'll go through it in a bit more detail down the potty.
Nice one. Yeah, it was a much better effort, mate, especially that first quarter. At times, Essendon looked like they were literally allergic to us. It was a bigger crowd than the Suns game, more vocal, more energy. We fed off the players, and I think they fed off us. We were pressuring and tackling well. We won 4 quarters for the first time this year, so pleasing in that regard. Hey, and the bars even stayed open for us. Could not believe that they shut at halftime against the Suns, but we kept them open until the end of the game, didn't we? So it was good. It was good to get a win and bounce back. But yeah, we're going to go through some of the reasons why it wasn't as good as it could have been. Key takeaways, mate. What do you think?
Yeah, massive tackle count from our side, but only 30 from the Bombers. Their intent around the ball was just not there, and ours was. Mills had an absolute screamer of a game again, getting all the votes in the coaches' votes there. So it didn't seem like there was a whole lot from their perspective at all. They weren't putting up much of a fight, but we were, and that was grand. So we really saw some massive tackle counts on our side. Some changes in the way that we did things as well. So we saw Blakey taking more kickouts than Lloyd. I know Lloyd's been under the pump recently by most of the Swans fans, not being at his proper standard this year. So seeing Blakey take 9 of the kick-ins, and with Lloyd only doing the 2, it's showing a change in his role. And he also had 4 tackles. And Lloyd is not really known as a bloke who's going out there to get tackles. He's a possession guy. He's a rebound boy. So we see what looks like a potential change in his role and what he's going to add to the team. And of course, at the same time, what Blakey's going to be adding to the team perhaps in the future. So interesting. I found that really interesting. How about yourself?
Yeah, look, I think it was Horse after the game hit the nail on the head. I think he said we won the contest, we got it right. And as you're saying, we're plus 26 tackles. I mean, for a team to only get 30 and for our Millsy to get 13 by the end of the game, like almost half of the opposition's total numbers, is pretty damning, I think. We had plus 11 inside 50s, plus 5 clearances. That was pretty even throughout. But it was more just that effort, that consistent effort. We obviously got our hands on it, had 7 out of 10 of the highest disposal getters. They're all Swannies, Chad, Millsy, Errol, Lizard, Lloyd, Parks, Rowie, and they were all 75% in efficiency and above. Career highs for Mills, as we mentioned, 13 tackles, unbelievable. Heaney and Bell not far behind on 5, and Rowie and Lloyd on 4. Chad, 32 disposals, that's career high, and Tommy McCartan, 15 spoils. And I think we'll touch on Joey the Bull all-time records throughout. I will just say, and I know that this has been picked up by a lot of Swans fans, and it's pretty obvious when you watch it, when you're kicking 21 behinds, you can remove 5 of those because I think it was 4 rushed and 1 touched, but it depends on how you look at it. But either we had 21 behinds, I mean, that was the actual score, or we had, 16 behinds. If we'd actually just kicked our average accuracy for goal conversion from rounds 1 to 8, which is 65%, the final score would have been 150 to 47. So that's that 100-point gap that I think most Swans fans were feeling like we left on the table. Obviously, there's a lot of variables there, and you'd have to tinker with Essendon's eventual outcome in that hypothetical discussion. But ultimately, would have been a nice percentage boost. We'd still be 5th on our wins-loss, but come the end of the season, like we found last year, we just missed out on the 4 because we didn't quite pump those scores when we could have. So hopefully this doesn't come back to bite us in the butt. But what did you make in general? Like, let's talk a little bit about Essendon. We won't go into too much, but we're almost, we're nearing the bye, and we're starting to take stock with how the competition's looking. So let's have a quick chat about how Essendon have been performing and how we've been performing to date.
Yeah, I think we'll go, I guess, how we're performing in a little bit of detail, but who we've beaten. We've beaten GWS, who are now 15th. They're misfiring, and the coach has since resigned last week. We beat Geelong, which was a fantastic game, Buddy's 1,000 and everything, all the emotion that dragged into it. And then we had what was the most horrendous loss against the Bulldogs, where we were insanely flat. We got lucky with North Melbourne's win. We only just scraped that through. They're coming 17th. We smashed the absolute joke of a team that is at the moment West Coast. I don't mean that in a mean way. I'm saying that they're in a really bad way right now. They're coming 18th. Hawthorn we beat, and again we only beat them because we really pulled it together in the 4th. They're coming 13th, and then of course Essendon 16th. So let's look at those numbers: 15th, 7th, 17th, 18th, 13th, and 16th are the teams that we've beaten. I've got a bit of a feeling, and I'm concerned, are we flat track bullies? Are we the kind of team where the boys will see a team that aren't exactly firing off and then just jump on them, whereas the team puts up a bit of a fight and we just absolutely collapse, like what happened with Hawthorn, which put up a fight, almost took us out. North Melbourne put up a fight. We almost got taken out. The Bulldogs, that was just a bad game.
I don't know, mate.
Brisbane and Gold Coast is just not the same. It's
going to be interesting. And as you're saying, those 3 losses, the Bulldogs had 26 scoring shots to our 15. They were 9-17. So really lucky not to get completely smashed. Mm-hmm. Lions, I think, we were chatting about this before we recorded, can hold our heads high. We just lost that second quarter. Otherwise, we were pretty competitive, and, they're coming second. So it wasn't that disappointing. But, after the Suns game and just how flat we looked, that was, I thought, our worst game of the year. And then Freo comes out the next week and beats them by 30 points up at Metricon. So switch it. The Suns beat Freo by 30 points up at Metricon. So I felt a little bit better about that. But, we're sort of seeing a bit of a picture that, we've only really beaten 2 top 8 teams at the moment. Geelong, just the one. Geelong. Western Bulldogs, they're on the cusp, but we lost to them. So we've literally beaten 1 top 8 team. Mm-hmm. And we've played, we haven't really played that many top 8 teams. So
that's right. Yeah.
But if we look at Essendon's run, we won't go into as much details, but they've actually had a harder run than us up until round 9. They're sitting on 16th, as we said, 2 wins, 7 losses. Those 2 wins are against the middle 6 teams. So Adelaide 13th, Hawthorn 14th. Both those clubs are rebuilding, relatively new coaches. There's 7 losses, 5 of which have been against top 8 teams. So they've lost against Geelong, Brisbane, Melbourne, Freo, and now the Swans. and 2 against Middlesex teams, so Collingwood and Western Bulldogs. But with the Bulldogs sitting at 9th now, looking like they're going to pounce and make a run in the 8, you could probably consider them a top 8 team now. But so when we look at how we've gone to date and how the Bombers have gone to date, they've had a harder run. We've had an easy run, but we really didn't put them away, which is the disappointing thing, I think.
Yep.
Great to get the win, but disappointing somehow.
Yeah, I think you've summed it up perfectly. I think at the end of the day, we just haven't been convincing with our wins. Like, we're happy. Great. We've got those wins. We've banked out 6 wins. That's fantastic. It's good for the season. We needed those wins to kind of propel forward, but they weren't convincing. And this game against the Bombers, just how sad it all looked and what all the talking points are afterwards on their side. Yeah, I think the next few games, the next 5 games, and we'll talk about that further down the line, so incredibly important to actually gauge where the Swans are at this year.
Yep. So, I mean, look, we could probably go on a little bit more about that sort of stuff, just like that general reflection leading into the bye. But we will talk about the upcoming games and then, of course, the game ahead. But we'll do that a little later on in the potty. We're going to move on to this week. We're going to smush favourite moments into the ABOB medal. So we're going to just talk about both of those things together. So next up is the ABOB medal, which is our equivalent of the Bob Skilton medal, which is, of course, the Bevies' best bloods. And they were this week in 3-2-1 points order. Cal Mills again, the Chad, Warner, and Goulden, 3-2-1, mate. So kick us off with Millsy.
Millsy, massive game. You'll go through the stats. He just was huge everywhere. Again, he's just finding new gears all over the place. It's one of those, we'll go through the stats right now, and it's just kind of everyone was blowing out with the stats. So the numbers are kind of hard to determine. Just because you've had an enormous amount of X, Y, Z, does that really mean that you've played a whole lot better than we normally would? And not necessarily, considering how bad the Bombers were playing, but Mills and a few of these fellows that we've talked about were just over the top, fantastic. So yeah, the numbers there, Noddy, I guess you can go through them.
29 disposals. I think did Warner get 32? Yeah, he got 32. So Mills was very close. So number 2 for the Swans there. 13 tackles was just like, got a huge fantasy score. It was like 156. It was out of this world. 7 inside 50s, equal first with Parker. 7 clearances, which is best on ground. 31 pressure acts.
Massive.
Best on ground. So. Yeah, just another game where he steps up. He had a relatively quiet game against the Suns, by his standards. Mm-hmm. But I actually think I was going back through that because obviously I watched both games, the Lions and the Suns, delayed because the Wi-Fi situation in Fiji wasn't great. But I noticed that Tuke Miller and Cal Mills were basically both taken out of the game. Like, these guys rack up the ball. And I think they sort of, to an extent, nullified each other that game. So that sort of made sense to me once I went through the numbers. But anyway, in this game against the Bombers, he was just everywhere, and he was just so hard at it. Horse also acknowledged in the press conference afterwards that when it's your leader who's setting the that sort of just it spreads onto the other players, and you could see it was just a much more concerted effort with the pressure and the tackling, and really Cal Mills was largely to thank for that.
Yeah, absolutely, and it was from the very beginning. The amount of pressure, his intent around the ball, that all just gelled that team together from the very beginning. We saw it while we were at the game; you could feel it. And it just propelled the team to be playing the way that they play, which was a great bounce-back game against a really flat game at the week before against Gold Coast. So, yeah, Mills doing it not only on the stats sheet, but also with just being a captain, being around it, getting the team propelled forward.
Yeah, unreal. All right, mate, Chad, he is looking so good, isn't he? Just keeps getting better.
It's concerning because now the AFL knows about him. They're all worked it out. They're all worked out that this kid is very, very, very good. He shining light in those early few games last year when we were on a hot run that was surprised everyone with our young crew. And he's just getting better week in, week out. He's polling very high most weeks in the ABOB, and I'm assuming the same in all of the other trackers. And it's just, he seems to be just finding some extra lines to make his impact known. So, yeah, the Chad doing it all, and he's getting himself further and further up in this Bob's and in this ABOB medal rank, and he's polling consistently now. So, huge stuff by the Chad.
So good, mate. Like 32 disposals, career high to date. 3 tackles, 6 inside 50s, equal second with Goulden. 12 score involvements, 5 clearances. He's just got that pace out of the pack. He's clean. He's sharp. You know, obviously his tackle numbers were down, but I mean, maybe the role was switched. I mean, if Mills is just like that much on fire with tackling, you know, and then Rowie, I think, was helping out as well. You know, that actually allowed Chad to get his hands more on the ball. I mean, look, 32 disposals, that's huge. I think he got like 25 or something a couple of weeks ago, and that was his highest to date. But 32, that's like proper, like leather poison. I'm your star mid sort of numbers, right?
Yeah, for sure. That's what the numbers look like for the fellow that gets the Brownlow at the end of the year. That's the kind of numbers you expect him to see on a regular basis. So, albeit against the competition, the Bombers, but yeah, the Chad absolutely looking beautiful.
Yeah, and we'll talk about a pretty big point that's come out in the last 24 hours later on about Dusty Martin, but how we think that, you know, we've got an absolute ripper already here in front of us, and the Chad is just going from strength to strength, week to week. So anyway, Errol Goulden, my goodness, he some of his kicking was just his field kicking. We were like, so we're at the game, and you know he had a couple of good moments with Hickey, but his just field kicking is just so exquisite. It's kind of hard to like put into words. It's just, you know, he's like, it's not every time. Yeah, every now and then he gets a clanger, but when he nails it, you can just see it. It's poetry, because he assesses the kick within like a second, and he just nails it. He just like that one kick I'm talking about in particular was on our side of the ground, on the O'Reilly side. I think he kicked to Papley, was it?
Yeah, it was,
down the line. It was just so good. It was right in front of us, and I was like, oh man, I had to pick my jaw up off the ground. Anyway, what do you think of his game, mate?
Yeah, mate. Look, Steve-O's shrine is paying absolute dividends continually. So keep, doing whatever you do, Steve-O, on your side, mate, because he's got 26 disposals, 20 of them kicks. So using his weapon at its absolute optimum. 7 marks, 6 inside 50s, and 500 meters gained. So he is just really going well. That shift, I don't know if it's necessarily a shift or whether he's just playing a slightly different role or managed to get further up the ground, but that wing position that he's playing is maybe his position for the future. And it's not just a hard runner is his style of game. It's just that quality of kick. If you give him some space and he gets some people in a lead, he's going to nail it most of the time. He did have one shocker kick, but he made it up across the board. So, yeah, grand. Loved Gordon.
So good. I mean, I think this game, like typically when there's a big win, you could squeeze that 1 point could be probably 2 or 3 players. But so in terms of honourable mentions, we had a couple, didn't we? We've got Tommy McCartan, Parker, Papley, and Blakey. They all played very well. Do you want to chat about Tommy and Parks there, mate?
Yeah, I don't want to go over the stats too much. I just want to kind of show what was the intent, because the numbers for everyone were huge. But Tommy McCartan's big number, 17 1%ers, like huge. The second place was his brother with 6. Tommy had 17. That's just being everywhere, spoils, tap-ons, punches, doing everything you could just to play his role. He's getting better and better and better and better every single week. He's moving into an elite status there in the back if he's not already. Love it. Parker, 23 disposals, 82% efficiency, which is fantastic considering the kind of role that he plays. 538 meters gained, second on ground. and knock himself a goal while he was at it. And what we liked the most, he was getting involved. He was getting in the face of Shields, giving him a bit of a taunt that the whole AFL media is just flipped out about. So it's just, there's nothing to it. The boys were just giving it to the competition. Shields could have done something. Someone else could have done something. They didn't. The talk is, Parker better not back down from a contest. When have you ever seen him back down from a contest? So everyone just calm down, leave it on the field. We move on to the next week.
Yeah. Luke, Mr. Contest Parker with the shoulder shuffle there. I thought it was pretty funny. Look, and Shield has been, a lot of people have spoken about. I mean, it's not the first time in the news that people have said Shield could be a little bit harder at it. But I mean, I thought they knew what they were getting from the Giants. But the Giants were with that stellar list. They not giving up players that they wanted. So anyone that leaves the Giants, there's a reason for it, and that's probably his big deficiency. But yeah, look, Caroline Wilson, I think it was today or yesterday, came out saying it was just like really poor form. But I don't really know where her head's at. I mean, just because I think what happened is it was caught on camera. I mean, there is, like, even at the ground, there's a lot of sledging that happens. It's all done in pretty good. Well, you can't say good faith, but it's all part of the game, I think.
We've played contact sports. You say what you say, you do what you do, and you leave it on the ground, you move on. That's just what it is. I mean, I don't know what Cara's on about. Like her boy, she's a big Richmond fan. Tom Lynch elbowed a guy in the head. He came off bleeding. Like, nothing to be said about that. Yet you're going to talk about Parker because he's given a bit of a sledge. Come on, just calm down, Cara. Like, I genuinely don't think that she's a decent journalist, but that would just stay out of this one. It's just silly.
Yeah, and obviously we'll chat about the game next week against the Blues, but they've got a pretty big midfield unit, so Park's going to have to step up, and because they're probably going to come at him, just because that's kind of what happens. But anyway, Tommy Papley and Lizard also had great games, and Papley probably was, for me, the one that could have almost got that 1 point there instead of Goulden. But 13 score involvements, best on ground, 21 disposals, 2 goals, 3 behinds. He's still finding his form, but 9 centre bounce attendances. So really used as that sort of injection of dynamic movement from the square. Obviously able to go forward and kick, but he's looking like, after 2 weeks back, he's looking like, the Tommy Papley that we know and love. In terms of Lizard, we touched on him earlier. He's had more kick-ins than Lloydie. 26 disposals in the end, 21 of which were kicks. So him and Goulden, just with those beautiful left pegs, 85% efficiency for Lizard there. Most meters gained on the ground, 562. So, I think that's probably it. In terms of favourite moments, we'll just squeeze them in here, mate. Or just talking points. 2 rucks. I thought it worked well.
I loved it. It looked really grand. I think that's what most of us were expecting to see once Hickey came in. We're not going to hold back Hickey just because Laddams was doing a good job. Like, Hickey has been an absolute savior for us in the form of like another Jesus, if you think that. He's been incredible. And you're looking at the numbers of the amount of hitouts and contests. So the Laddams and Hickey combined together for, 24 hit-out wins over 68 contests. So, pretty good percentages there, averaging of about 35% for between the two of them. And Draper only won the 16 of the 45. So all up, we had the majority of the run in the hitouts, winning them eventually. But it just looks like that's a good position for us to be in. I think Hickey had a couple shots at goal. I know Laddams had a couple shots at goal. It seemed like we were totally in control of the centre, albeit against the Bombers, but it looked like the combination was working pretty well. So I don't know whether that's necessarily going to be what we're going to be looking at every single week, depending on the competition. But, if you're a great player, you try to find a spot to make you fit. And it looks like they found a way to make those two fit because Hickey, we know what he's been doing. He's been consistent since he's come over. Laddams has really filled in that spot perfectly while Hickey's been away. So yeah, love to see them both out there. That'd be fantastic.
Just going to your point, I think that this ties into the other moves that they made. They brought in, we had those extra smalls. So Bell and Wicks provided pretty good pressure, I thought, kicked a couple of goals themselves. And so I think that if you're going to have that many tools in the team, and really we're talking like Paddy, Tommy, Tall Jesus, the lad, and then you go forward and we've got, Buddy and McDonald. I don't think I'm missing anyone there, right? Because Hayden and Amadi were still in the resis. But yeah, so I think we're trying to get that balance. And certainly if we come up against teams that regularly play two rucks, it just makes sense to also play two rucks, I think, because you just shouted out there, like when you've got two key rucks that are chopping in and out, they can both kick in their own right. It's a win-win because, it's another attacking threat, but it also totally drains the key ruck. Like, so their chop out ruck Brian, he's young, Nick Bryan. He's going to probably be a star in the future, but at the moment he's largely just supporting. So it's hard to say that they've got two, but Laddams and Hickey are two starting key rucks. Obviously very good around the ball themselves. I think we were surprised, at the game, because we were thinking that Hickey would start, but it was Laddam mostly, and then Hickey, Laddam in the middle, and then Laddam's in the middle, and then Hickey forward. So that was kind of interesting to see. But how about Buddy? So, totally selfless around goals, just setting up people. He kicked 2-4 in the end, I think, but yeah, I mean, it was a bit of a it was like he was toying with them for a while there, at least in the first half.
He was up and about, and I think he sensed as well that he was able to just grab a bag today. He saw the competition, he saw that the way they were moving, the speed that they were going, and he was like, I'm on fire here, I'm just going to go at it. He was getting around the ball like a small forward or a rover. We were joking amongst us that maybe he's going to do the next 10 years as a rover, because the way that he was moving so fluidly and so quickly around the ground, it was pretty cool. The score sheet, unfortunately, 2 and 4, and he gave 1 or 2 away, but hey, Buddy's doing what Buddy does. He looks fantastic. His body looks amazing.
Yeah, it's coming 9th in the Coleman, 21 goals at the moment. Left a couple out there, but that's, you don't get to 1,000 without kicking 700 behinds, do you? So Lance Buddy Franklin, and we wouldn't have it any other way. We'll just come full circle there, mate. Coaches' votes. So we're pretty accurate here. Cal got 10, Chad got 8, Tommy Papley got 5. We went with Errol instead, but he got 4. And then it was Parks on 2 and Tommy McCartan 1. I think the AFL saw it pretty similarly. I think they had Buddy up there as well. Did you have any other favourite moments you want to shout out before we move on to hot topics, mate?
Yeah, I wanted to say that with Logan being on the ground at the same time as Buddy, he's getting this apprenticeship that you can't buy. Like it's the greatest apprenticeship you could ever imagine having, and that's maybe why he's so keen to stick around while Buddy's here, and that's why I've got a strong opinion that Buddy's probably going to sign on for another 2 on the back of this, just to kind of mold this young jumbo jet into what he can potentially be. But also Logan gave away a goal. Like, this is a kid who hasn't had that many goals, who is fiercely competitive, who's got Buddy and some other fiercely competitive fellows around, who's got some people trying to chop up his job in McLean and Amati. But he was giving away goals as well. And it just tells me that he's got an excellent mindset for what his future is, which is, I don't have to score goals now. My job is somewhat safe. I need to play my role. I need to learn and get through the games and do everything I can to help the team win. It's not about personal stats. It just says a lot about the young group that we've got coming through. I think they're in a very healthy spot, and Logan is a big part of that.
Yep. We'll just say Tommy McCartan's contest with Cordwell there, totally fine, and we'll chat about Rowie later. But I just thought that was just a brilliant piece of individual courage. Wonderful contest. Obviously, Caldwell came off second best, but it's just the McCartan brothers. They are a particular type of human, aren't they? They just are so hard at it and so purely committed to the contest. It's kind of a thing of beauty, isn't it? But
it's eyes for the ball, and I'm glad that nothing came of it, because McCartan had purely eyes for the ball, and Caldwell was just a hard nut running back with it, and he just came off second best. But yeah, I think that was a fair assumption. No need for any MRO visits for old Tommy McCartan.
Yep. Heaney, another quiet game, but played his role, had a couple of nice little touches. That tap on to Buddy, I thought that was nice and Heaney-like, and I think he kicked a goal in the end or so. But it's good to know that we're ticking over the W's, and a player like Heaney is not having to do it every week. You know, you can't put too much pressure on a player like that who's he's going to come in and out of form. He's only human after all, but yeah, no, it was pleasing overall, I think, in that regard. All right, I think we're up to hot topics, mate. So how do we pull up? What changes will we make? We didn't have a VFL game. We had a scratch match. But, yeah, we're just going to have a rolling chat about all of these things. Kick us off with Joey, mate. I know you made a very beautiful video. I actually cried when I saw that video. I thought it was very touching. But, yeah, fill us in, mate.
Yeah, practically teared up myself when I was making it. Joey officially number one contested possessions and clearances in the AFL of all time. That it's an incredible feat by a guy. It was brought up with Horse in the post-game wrap-up, and he effectively, like, Joey doesn't care. Like, he's not going to make a big deal out of it. He's not going to do a lap of the ground or anything. He's just going to move on to next game and just continue on with his career. So he's a selfless player. He's just a fantastic guy to have, an absolute clubman and an absolute bull. So Joey, the man, contested possessions, clearances, the title belongs to him. Come at him.
Yeah, and I just think, again, him doing what he knows best feels better for me as a fan, sitting watching the game. Like, I know we've got all these up and comers, and and Cal is just knocking it out of the park, but as is Chad, and really good support from the likes of Rowie, Goulden, obviously, Florent bouncing around. Juzzy, I guess Juzzy had a bit of a quiet game by his standards, but but just something about Joey there, while he's still fit and able to have the effect that he can have. I say roll on with that. Plus, I want him to pump up some of those stats so he can get a bit of a lead on those other players.
Bit of a buffer. Look, we know now, moving on to MRO, Rowbottom copped a week for the bump. The Swans contested, but they didn't win. The AFL deemed that he ran past the ball with the intent, and he got hit your man Merritt in the head. So he's sitting a week out. With the week out, do you think that Joey falls into the middle just naturally, or do we fill that spot up with someone else?
I think he'll stay in the mix there. I think probably if there's nothing else wrong with him, I see Campbell coming back in, because he wasn't really doing too much wrong. I mean, he maybe had a quiet past few weeks before he sat out, because he was managed last week, right? Oh, sorry, against the Bombers. So I guess that he'll be coming in there, unless they want to go, like for like. But there's not really. Your Rowie players are already pretty much in there, aren't they? Like
they're kind of already there. You kind of moving the play around, yeah. Unless
they want to maybe bring Dill Stevens back in, or Ryan Clark's been thereabouts the past couple of weeks, and we had a little bit of a moment with Ryan Clark. I don't know if he knows that.
Well, when you say a moment, he was doing laps of the ground, and us in our drunken state were screaming positive things and reinforcement to him from the sideline. So he was getting around, and we're going, God, keep it up, Clark. We'll see you soon, mate. You're the best, and doing our stuff. So I don't know whether he appreciated it, but I hope that he knows that it comes from a place of love.
Absolutely, because we were basically the only people left in the stadium, apart from another drunk bunch of Bombers fans that were like kind of directly above us,
Yeah.
and their medical sub Lloyd, I believe, or Lord, he was doing laps as well. So they were drunk screaming at Lord, and we were drunk screaming at Clark, and it was like battles of the medical sub. It was, and then we would shoot out. The staff were just like, "Get out of here, you idiots!"
Yeah, they asked us to move on. So, look, just wrapping this all up, I think I would like, considering how big the Blues are, and considering how fantastic that contested ball that they have, I would love to see Joey actually do a cameo stint in Rowbottom's absent in the mids. I would love to see that. I don't know whether it's necessarily going to happen, whether we're going to stick to our guns, but this is the kind of moment that I thought we would be using Joey in. He's going to come in against the D's, against Brisbane, against Carlton, where it's necessary to have a big body like him, and so much success that he's had. In the middle, we would take that. Let's see what the intention is when the team gets announced and when we watch the game. But I'm hoping that's what happens.
Yeah, we'll have to say. I mean, they've got a pretty big midfield. Anyway, we'll chat about them in a moment. We've got a few more hot topics here, mate. Before we go on to Dusty, which is a big one, I just wanted to say I met a very interesting Swans fan at a first birthday party on the morning of the game. It was a gent by the name of Craig Roberts, and he's been really active in the Maroubra Saints over the years. He's coached juniors there. His son played footy there, and his son actually played with Errol Goulden from a very young age, like the age of 6, like after Auskick. And all the parents knew, even from that age, that Errol was going to go pro, that he was just an absolute gun. But what I was really enjoying the conversation with Craig about was he's a bit like the O'Reilly rabble. He really likes getting into the game and supporting and singing. And he sits in Bay 30, and he's trying to get this a group around him, or the whole Bay ideally, and call them the Bay 30 Singers, and really get more songs sung instead of the typical chants and stuff like that. And I mentioned I'd spent a bit of time in Japan and gone to baseball games, and the supporters there is just next level. They've got basically a different song for every single player. Admittedly, there's only 11. Is it 9 or so on the field? So there's a lot more players in Aussie rules. You'd have to have more songs, but I really loved where his head was at. So I said, I gave a shout out to the podcast and said, follow us on Facebook. And once he tees up those songs, to let us know in the O'Reilly, and we'll get behind him and start singing these songs with the Bay 30 Singers. So yeah, cheers, Craig. It was really nice chatting with you, mate, and all the best. We're looking forward to it, mate.
I look forward to that, because for the listeners that don't know, both Noddy and I half musos, budding musicians maybe. So we love to sing for our own right, and we think we're good after a few drinks and some karaoke. So I reckon that'd be a mad idea. Let's get out there, start singing some songs together, get the crowd get into it.
Yeah, it sounded like because he was talking about having been to Canberra and to a folk festival, and there were some shanty singers there, and he really liked the sound of it and thought it could work well. And then he found that there's a club, I think, or a regular group that sing in Redfern. It might even be out of that pub on the corner there, not far from the Arcadia. But anyway, this is all makes some sense to Sydney-siders, so we won't go into details. But yeah, basically he's considering reaching out to the Redfern Shanty Society or whatever it is, and seeing if they wouldn't mind doing a collaboration. But I'm really up for that. To be honest, you think about those big test matches in rugby, when there's a bit of a lull in play, and the English sing, swing low, sweet chariot, and the Irish sing, Fields of Athenry, and I guess we used to sing Waltzing Matilda, like in a rugby union sense. But yeah, it'd be cool to have something else up our sleeve. Primarily to, so the team's struggling like against the Suns, the crowd can sing a song to help spur on the players, and then they can feed off that. And I thought it was a great idea, and yeah, I'm really hopeful that the Bay 30 Singers can take off.
Let's see how we go. Let's get that whole thing moving. Let's go, Craig.
That's it, mate. Dusty may be coming to Sydney. It was all a little bit of a rumor, and then it was confirmed. AFL Dimmer's basically given him his blessing, the Godfather Dimmer. We have been really hashing this out on our WhatsApp group, haven't we? We've sent it to the Brains Trust, the bevy, and we're like, is this a good idea? Is this a bad idea? We've had hundreds and hundreds of comments from different Swans fans on the different groups on the socials. And really, it's yes, it's a good idea. No, it's a terrible idea. Of course, the other thing is he could be going to the Giants, given the situation that they're in at the moment. And I just also saw an article that said that they're really that after the 10 or so years, with the 200 million that the AFL have put into the Giants, that Aussie rules participation in Western Sydney is dead last. It's like I don't know, something like 11% or something, and this is after rugby league about 30 and soccer 45 or whatever the numbers were. So. Yeah, mate. Dusty to the Swans. How do you feel about that?
Look, I asked the question of the community through Twitter, and Zane came out and mentioned it could be like a possible thing. It could be like Lockett, where he's just trying to take, or no, rather, he's trying to get out of that media bubble that is Victoria and move themselves back to Sydney. So he'd
like
spent some time,
and Franklin, I guess,
like Franklin and Lockett, and so maybe that's the kind of thing he's looking at doing, which is fantastic. Like, good on him. Like, if that's what he wants. He's not the kind of guy that's going to do a lot of media, so he's not someone you can kind of build a franchise or your marketing around like a Franklin could. So Franklin's been fantastic in the media. Most of the advertisements have got him in it for marketing. He's a very marketable player. Dusty does his work on the pitch. He doesn't do his work off the pitch. He's not going to do any very few advertisements, although he's done a couple. He doesn't do his media interviews. He doesn't like it. So look, fine. But if just say it's either one of us, as in when I say either one of us, I mean GWS or Sydney. I struggle to think of where he would sit, considering that in the future, we're going to be having to pay some of these fantastic young players that we've been talking about and praising this entire last 2 years a fair bit more money in the next 2 or 3 years. And I don't know whether we have the luxury of being able to afford some of those players as well as a Dusty down the line and potentially another couple of years of Buddy. So it's kind of, I know the numbers are kind of and salaries are more down your route there, Noddy. Do you have any opinion on that part?
Oh, I'm just going off what I think you said you heard that Dusty's salary might have been up around that 1.4 million or something, and he's got another 2 contracted years, which doesn't mean much these days, so long as you can, as the clubs, reach an agreement. But yeah, look, I thought initially, if it's about getting out of the bubble and maybe having a crack at another flag, like, would he consider reducing? I think most fans have said there's no way that Dusty would do that, but you never know. My point was, if we could take Buddy's current million or just over and then divvy that up between him, Dusty and Buddy, then I'd probably take Dusty in a heartbeat. But it really just comes down to your point that I don't think we want to overspend, because we've got, the AFL's best young core coming through, as recognised by pretty much everyone. And, the bigger, big names that we have, the more big names that we have, the less likely we are to hold on to this amazing developing core. But I mean, look, I think most Swans fans would salivate at the idea of Dusty hitting Buddy lace out over the next couple of years. And look, I think it was the age. Like Steve-O had a couple of really good points on this, and that he's already 31, his best footy's behind him. Richmond would force a really, it wouldn't be a great trade, so. And I think he also said that, there's some of those points you said, that he's not, like, culturally, is he going to fit into the Bloods? Maybe, maybe not. I think that the Bloods have a really good way of making players fit in to the culture just seamlessly anyway. So I put the question to our group saying, would you prefer Jordan De Goey over Dustin Martin? And I think most of us said yes, for the fact that he was younger and his best footy's ahead. So Steve-O said, sorry, Steve-O said that Dusty, if you wanted to trade for him, if we could fit him into the salary cap, all that considered, that we just give suggest giving that first round pick that we got from Adelaide via Melbourne for Jordan Dawson. I said, you think Jordan Dawson is better than Dusty? And he said, well, yeah, it's all ahead of him. It really is. He was very strong on that point. So what do you think of that?
Yeah, I feel the same. I think that Dawson is a better player now than Dusty. I think Dusty is totally impactful. There's no doubt about that. But I think Dawson just has elite status for the next 5 years ahead of him. I'm not a big fan of Dugoe. Just not only is he not performing on the ground, he also off the pitch. He's got a whole world of troubles. That just
so
is
loose.
not. He's just a loose guy. It's just not marketable. It's not a good show. It's not what you want to have in a market like Sydney, where we're trying to grow the game in a positive way. If you don't want any of your boys in the media for the wrong reason, we leave that normally to the NRL as Sydney siders. So that's a couple of the reasons why I'm not a big fan of doing them. And look, I don't actually think that there's much to this, and I'm hoping that I get pulled up wrong. I don't know, but I think it's like what's happened so far. He's been cited around Sydney. He kind of grew up around here, around Camden Way, about my way on Camtown. And Peggy O'Neill commented that she'd spoken to him about his future. She didn't say anything else. And Peggy O'Neill is the president of the Richmond Club. That's all she says. She goes, oh, yeah, we've spoken about his future. That doesn't mean anything. And then Harvey comes up today and just mentions yeah, look, whatever Dusty wants to do with his future is up to him. That's just the coach being nice to a player that's gone through a lot of personal things lately. That's what you want to hear from a coach about one of their better players and, effectively a mate that's, won a few premierships together. So I actually don't think there's a whole lot in it. I may be proven wrong.
Yeah,
and GWS signs him next week, and I'm an idiot. But it wouldn't surprise me if he just signs him with the Tigers next year, and all of this is just a slow news day.
Well, he's at the Tigers. He's got another 2 years, but I just think that it could be that slow news day, but it could be with that report, that damning report about how badly the Giants have gone, in the heartland of rugby league and soccer, and with Leon Cameron, resigning and Jeremy Cameron, off at the Cats. I know that was last year, but it's sort of hard to. I think they're at a bit of a crossroads, Giants, and this would be the kind of thing that would help a really bad report sort of be not as bad as it could be. Gil McLaughlin's going to stand by his decision to have expanded to these non-traditional markets, or in these non-traditional markets like Sydney and Brisbane, and in the Giants and the Suns. But I think that a player like Dusty might help gloss over some of the failures. But it's pretty early to be talking about all of this stuff. So I agree with you that it could just be a slow news day. But I also took it as pretty prophetic that if they're gonna release it on the AFL app, that there's probably some clout behind it, and that it will go ahead. So it's like this, no smoke without flame. I get it. I believe it. I do. I think just when it comes down to the nuts and bolts, when it comes down to brass tacks, I don't think that he's going anywhere. I don't think the Giants have bigger problems than to pick up just a very good player. It's not just a good player is what they need. They need a lot more than just that. They need a coach to begin with, and that's where they need to start. And then they also need to fill up some extra spots. Filling it up with a fellow that's going to be being paid 1.34 mil a year, and that's not necessarily going to be doing a whole lot of media for you, is not the way to go. I don't think that being a smart move. And we've spoken about the reasons why maybe we don't do it. Yeah, that's the reason. I think it's more so that there may be some noise in it from Dusty's perspective, but he would have to really want to make it work and drop some of that salary in order to make it happen. You think about the Giants, and they're probably going to, they might enter into a trade, and they've got a host of really good young midfielders as well that I know that we've spoken about. It'd be great trying to get some of those players over to the Swans, like Tim Taranto or even Tom Green. That would just be a dream come true. Maybe if he does go to the Giants, some of those players head over. I don't know. It's gonna be very interesting the way it plays out. But we'll have to wait and see. But Marn Grook jerseys, mate. We've got a new one. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, look, I initially looked at it and I've just gone. I think Steve-O mentioned it. Like, is that Melbourne's jersey? The colors are different. They're a bit the blue's a bit brighter. It's taken me a week of looking at it before I realized, like, you know what? Oh my god, I really want one. It looks pretty cool. So I'm picking up one. I think it's pretty sweet. One of the things I love about Mount Grook is that, well, you know, the Sir Nicholas round is the a didgeridoo playing after the goal celebrations. That's I don't understand why that's not a permanent thing. Like, I don't need to necessarily hear whatever song gets played. I don't even know what other song gets played. But as soon as
Errol.
yeah, well, that's a different story. I'm cool. I'm all for that one.
Or
But
hero for Buddy.
Hero's good. But when it's the didgeridoo kicks in straight off the bat, bow, that sends shivers down my spine. It gets me excited. It makes me feel like I'm really involved. It's just there. So I think they got to keep that forever. Like, bugger off those other songs. Just big didgeridoo sounds. It's some fantastic Indigenous things going around. That'd be fucking grand moving forward.
Yeah, look, I quite enjoy that as well, mate. I know the chills you're talking about. The vibe is amazing. This is a bit of a statement, a conversation without notice. I saw that the AFL had put a picture of all the all the Victorian-based clubs' jerseys and their Indigenous players. There was a bit of a, I guess a photo shoot taken at the MCG. This kind of reminded me of coronavirus when we couldn't get there. When I say we, I mean the interstate teams, the northern, South Australian and Western teams. And I every time I look at a picture of only the Vic teams, I feel like I haven't been picked for, the dodgeball team. And I'm thinking it makes me feel a little bit weird. How do you feel about that? I know that, our South contingent might not, think anything of it because they're Victorian based, and I'd be keen to hear what their thoughts are. But I see a picture like that when we're able to move now. Maybe it's a bit of a waste of funds, but in terms of the AFL, surely it's better optics to have the 18 clubs jerseys if you're going to do a photo shoot.
Yeah, I think logistically it's probably tricky, but there's always ways around it. They could CGI or have a dummy there with the jersey or something. But to make you feel a bit better, I don't think Collingwood was there either.
Really?
I'm pretty sure they weren't in that photo shoot. They didn't send the rep or didn't have something available at the time. So, but to your point, totally. It's not just this week. It's other times we see it where it's missing the Sydney representative or the Sydney and outside Melbourne representatives. But logistically, it must be just a nightmare. So I don't know. Just, you know what? Good. We stay out of that bubble. We attract players like Franklin and Dusty Martin. Good on you guys. Keep doing what you do. No problem.
Well, mate, I'm recording this from Perth tonight, as you know. I'm over here for work, and it's I don't know. It's pretty easy to hop on a plane these days. Although Perth's a different story. There's a few restrictions that you got to do if you're going to go to sites and stuff, but. Look, I don't know. I just saw that and thought it just took me back to coronavirus and the fact that I'm able to move around now. Or not just me, but like pretty much the rest of Australia and even internationally soon. I know there's going to be some visitors for work coming out, and so I just thought it was a bit of a cop out that we couldn't get one of our belly on a plane to the MCG. It'd take half a day, And if they're going to sink $20 million a year keeping the Giants afloat, then I think the clubs or the AFL could have what is it, eight other players present, or I don't know what Collingwood was doing, but I don't know. It's all good. It's all good. It's a great thing. I'll probably buy the jersey as well, mate. But I was like you. It was probably the tone of blue, because you recall, you go back, Adam Goods' mum designed that one before the Black Swan. There was a good one, sort of like that lighter blue, sky blue. I got one of those. I thought that was really good at the time. So I guess that brighter blue or darker blue sort of took me by surprise a little bit. But yeah, look, let's face it, mate. I'm not going to buy the jersey. If there's merch to be bought, I'm doing it. So, mate, we've got a public service announcement.
We do, yes.
Shall I read my carefully worded statement?
Read it, and I'll give a 2-worded statement thereafter.
Okay. Public service announcement. The pub closest to the stadiums, SCG and SFS, namely the Olympic, is under new management, and according to the publican/owner, they don't allow any kind of singing in their venue at all. That includes sports songs or popular songs like you might hear on the radio. So if you're like us in the rabble and like to enjoy singing the song more than once or twice after a win, I suggest you head up to Paddington, where there's a few other establishments that will let you in and sing the song. They're more realistic and embracing of the sporting locals. So that's my thoughts there, mate.
So to give everyone a bit of context very, very quickly, we were at the bar after the game, obviously in a fantastic mood. We started singing the team song, and we got shut down by the main manager, him suggesting that any team songs are not allowed to be sung, which is hilarious considering that they are literally across the road from the SFS and the SCG. So leave it there. Don't go to that damn pub. Go up to Paddington. There's better places, and sing yourselves ragged.
Oh, mate. Okay, we're going to a few injury updates. Fox should be in the mix somewhere. I think Cunners is not too far away. Sheldrick is 3 weeks after his knee arthroscopy. I think Sam Naismith, his right knee's gotten better, but his left knee is bad now. So that's kind of where we're at in terms of injuries. Let's talk about the games ahead just very quickly. So we've gotten through the first 9 rounds. The next 5, we've got the bye in between. So we've got 3 games, our bye, and then 2 more games. I think this, and I think a lot of other Swans fans are recognising this chunk of games is absolutely going to dictate how season 2022 goes for the Sydney Swans. Let's have a look at it. Those 3 games before the bye are they're all against top 8 teams. Carlton coming up this week, they're running 4th. Richmond 8th, and Melbourne, as we know, are 1st. Carlton's away, Richmond's at home, Melbourne is away. Then we've got the bye, and then after that, we've got 2 more games, one against the middle 6 team, namely Port, who's running 10th, but let's face it, after those 3 games, they could very easily be in the 8th themselves. And then we've got St Kilda that are running 6th. So Port is away, that's going to be hostile, and then the Saints at home. So look, this is an extremely challenging block. And really, if you think about it, we need to win at least 2 of these so we can be 8 wins, 6 losses before we enter that final stretch of 8 games. Because if we only manage those 2 wins from 5, then we'll need at least 5 from the final 8 to reach that golden number of 13 wins, which is the number that statistically gets you into finals, or has for the past decade or so. So critically important, this next run of 5. But, like that final 8, considering we've got 6 games against bottom 10 teams, getting 5 from 8 is not outside the realm of imagination, but it's just going to be much harder the more games we lose in the next 5. Are you seeing it the same way, mate?
Yeah, totally. It's the next few games, the next pack of games is really, and we mentioned it before, it is an example of where we genuinely sit in the competition. We were touted to be in the top 6 as we started, first couple of wins, top 4. And as we've kind of played and we've spoken about the teams that we've beaten and where they've ended up, we've kind of realizing it's like, maybe we're not in that mix. So this is imperative for us to work out. Are we a top 4 team? We need to win at least I'd say 3 of these games in order to hold ourselves high and say this is a top 4 team we're staring at. Otherwise, we are fighting for finals at that point.
Do you feel confident about any of these games? Could you? What are your tips, mate? How Carlton, Richmond, Melbourne, Port, and St Kilda? Like, I'm thinking maybe Carlton.
Yeah,
maybe Richmond.
I'll talk about Carlton in a second in our preview, but Richmond's playing well. Melbourne, I don't see anyone beating Melbourne outside of Brisbane this whole year, unless it's an insane upset and they go through some injuries. I just don't see it. They're just that good. They're streets ahead of everyone else. Port, I think we've got a chance. I think we mark up well against them. So I don't think they score as much as they need to, and we're very, very stingent. We're really, really stingy in that space.
Yeah.
And St Kilda, look, I think they're a pretty decent size. I think three of those. I think Carlton we have a decent chance at. I think Port we have a decent chance at. I think St Kilda's a bit of a rough one, and I still think Richmond can be beaten in the way that we play. So, yeah, I think Melbourne is a definitive loss, and I think St Kilda and Richmond are the super danger games.
Yep, and I'll just back up your point there. Yeah, we're the third best offense and the sixth best defense at the moment. So that's great to know, obviously. But as you say, I'm worried about that Port one. I just think Adelaide Oval, and as we get closer to them, we'll look into the previous encounters to see if there's any trends there. But yeah, it's going to be super, super tough, and really it's going to tell us, really what the reality of season 2022 is going to be. And hopefully, we come out on top, but we'll know we'll probably know by the bye, I think, Carlton, Richmond and Melbourne. So, fingers crossed there, mate. We may as well jump very quickly. We're going to do another quick little preview. We thought it had been missing this year, so we'll just we'll pop it in, and then just for good order's sake. So, you want to kick us off with some of those points there, Chriso?
Yeah, so we're playing Carlton this week. So this week it's 4 versus 5th, with us coming 5th. Carlton, 7 wins, 2 losses, 114%. Of their 7 wins, 1 has been off the top 8, 4 off the middle 6, and 2 of the bottom 4. So when you compare that to us, they've definitely beaten some teams in the middle there that are in the mix, and there's quite a few dangerous teams in the middle. So we are coming 5th at 6 wins and 3 losses at 125%. And our 2 losses have come from
no, that's theirs, mate. Yeah, they're
they're 2 losses.
That's theirs. Yeah, ours are obviously God. Here we go. Bulldogs, Brisbane, and Gold Coast. So, yeah. I think from their last 5 games, they're 4 wins, 1 loss. So they're running pretty well. They're on a 3-game win streak. So they're beaten. But you look at the teams they're beaten. North, Adelaide, and GWS. And I think you said you watched that game last week, right?
Yeah, I was watching the game tonight actually against GWS. It was. There's a lot of talk. I noticed that there was like a very convincing win by Carlton. I actually didn't see it that way at all. I didn't see Carlton being successful around the entire ground. They got the job done, but it wasn't as convincing as I thought. They were bombing the ball quite a lot into their 50 and kind of hoping for chances there. If you're going to be bombing the ball into our 50, the McCartan boys are going to clean you up. If that's the style you're going to be looking at, these kids are interceptors. They're great one-on-one. They move it really well. So I don't think that they've got a huge chance if they play it that way. And I haven't watched all of their games. I've only watched a couple. I don't recall that from the last game I watched them play, but from this week for sure, I was like, that's not a way to win against Sydney. And the other thing that I noticed that when GWS fell right behind in that first quarter, and second quarter kind of pulled it back a bit more, but in that first quarter, they dropped so many marks that were at their chest, just at their faces. GWS could have got a run on so many times, and they just failed to do so. So I think that was more of a moment of GWS playing themselves out of the contest early, which then ended up being the difference in the whole game anyway. So I don't see Carlton as being as much of a danger game as some people are predicting. I'm going to put my head up now and say, I think we're going to win this game and win it in a good way. And I think we're going to play our style of game and win it convincingly. So he's hoping I'm right. I'll come back and tell you all if I get it bad, but if I get it wrong, but I genuinely think that our style of game against Carlton is going to be better.
One thing I think we need to be wary of, and we do have a fairly decent defence, by the numbers. I know we've started slow, but I think we're gelling now. Carlton, 5 of their 9 games, they've scored 100 points or more. So they can get a real run on. 2 of the other 2 of the remaining 4, 2 have been 90 points or more. And then the last 2 have been 60 and 70 points. So they know how to score. They're not I think they're about 5th best offensively. But the point is they can punish teams on the scoreboard. So that's something we need to be careful of. Obviously, McKay out for them is massive. And I looked at the goal kickers against GWS. They really spread it around their mids and mid forwards. Charlie Kerno obviously is that pretty much sole tool there. I think Silvani backs him up there. But it's going to be. I think for me, mate, it's going to be that midfield, that quite formidable and quite large or tall midfield. If you think about Cripps, our boy Hewitt, Kennedy, Chera, who else they got running through there? That's pretty. There's some pretty big bodies there. So I think we're really without Rowie, we're going to definitely have to have Joey in there. Probably put Heaney in there for a bit of defensive pressure as well. Excuse me.
I think a big part of it is going to be our dual rucks that we've trialed out against the Bombers.
Yeah,
they don't have a strong ruck presence, so that's really where we can get some advantage there. Yeah. So
Pitternet is out. Yeah, Pitternet did his PCL, I think. So they got Tom de Koenig, who's a young he's a young ruck. And who have they got backing up? Is that like?
Don't even know. Didn't even notice.
Maybe they're just using like Silvani or something as a second ruck, but
So I think that's kind of where some of the space that we can at least counteract the size of their mids is that we do have a pretty solid ruck advantage in that space. So let's see where we go, but I think the game is more going to be played in the center is going to be an enormous part of it, but our defense I think is going to be the advantage that probably we're looking for.
We left Sam Walsh out there, mate. Ex number 1.
He's all right.
Just an up and coming player by the name of Sam Walsh. Zach Williams done his Achilles, I think, so he's out. That's a bit sad. Obviously, I quite like him as a player. So they got the likes of Stocker. If he's not already in there, he can slot in. There's a couple of ex-Swans, as we just mentioned a moment ago. We've got our old mate Nick Newman. Our boy Georgie Hewitt, who I'm still a bit sour about losing, and Luke Parks, ex-Swans Academy, but he's in and out of the best 22. So is there any other ex-Swans there?
I don't think so, no. But maybe, but I don't recall.
They're the
ones that really shine, I'd say.
Yeah. So, okay, you're a bit more confident than I am. I'm honestly never confident when I go to pick the tip for the Swans, but look, I think traditionally we play fairly well at Marvel. I'm not quite sure of our previous encounters. I just have to have a quick look there because I'm going to have to rely on some stats here. But
part of the problem, that part of my concern is playing down at Marvel. I don't know how our record is, but just how badly we played against the Dogs there, and I don't think it's got anything to do with the ground. I think that was just a hangover for what happened against Geelong at his Buddy's 1,000. I think there was just a lot of emotion was left and just needed to be rebuilt again. So I don't think that's necessarily the stadium. So look, Carlton's a grand team. Obviously, they're coming 4th, 1 spot above us, 1 extra win. But the styles of game is going to be fascinating. It's going to be a fascinating, fantastic game. So whoever's up and about in Sydney will be heading, or I'll be heading over to the Alex, who's had a bit of a refurb there. That's just to be a famous Swans venue. So I'm heading over there to see whether they've kept their word and going to continue doing exactly that. So have a look. If anyone's around, let us know. We'll have a couple of beers and hopefully cheer the Swans into a nice victory.
Awesome, mate. I've got them up here. We are 3 from the past 5 encounters. So we are 3 wins. They are 2 wins.
Yeah, so it's about equal then.
We won. It's the year before that, Carlton got us by 5. They were both at the SCG. And then the year before that, I think we've had 3 games at the SCG. That seems wrong, doesn't it? Yep, SCG. Oh, Metricon, that's right. In that coronavirus year, we played them up
right.
at Metricon, so that's a bit of an outlier. The last game at Marvel was in round 3 of 2019, and we won by 19 points. And then the year before that, it's going back too far. Anyway, it's going to be close.
They were a different team back then as well.
Yeah,
The stats kind of fall out of themselves at that point.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of our players has been on the list for 5 years. It's just whether they've been in the team or not. But if you look at Carlton, like Voss, they got a new coach. They're reinvigorated. Lygon Street's up and about. So, yeah, it's going to be tricky. But hopefully we can get the job done, mate, because we really need this one to kick us off for that chunk of 5 that we're talking about, a block of 5 games that are critically important for us. Mate, we better wrap it up. We've been chatting for ages.
Get it done.
There we go. All right. Well, if you've got nothing else, that brings us to the end of the episode. So on behalf of the Bevy, I'd like to say thank you to everyone for listening in. Tune in again on our socials for the videos that we put up, and team announcements and preview posts if and when we get around to it. Otherwise, make sure to keep following us on Instagram and Facebook at A Bevy of Bloods for other updates and announcements. Until then, up the Bloods, and can you
Swannies?